As an early Christmas present for myself, I bought a copy of Ghost's The Button House Archives, the book of the hit TV sitcom. It's a really good read for all fans of the show, and I particularly like the format. It's made up of a collection of fake documents from the Ghost universe, diaries, newspaper clippings, letters and so on, which really give you an insight into the characters when they were alive. And it made me think of some of my other favourite TV tie-in books, which all have a similar format. Later on, I'll be looking at books from the world of Doctor Who, Twin Peaks, and Mr. Robot. But first, a closer look at Ghosts. The book starts with a very useful timeline, showing you when all the characters were alive, and the main book jumps back and forth through that timeline. From 18th century letters, to postcards from the 1980s, and diaries from the 1940s. So you do need to be familiar with the characters in the show to understand exactly what's going on. But it is written by the cast, so all the characters' voices come through strongly, and there are plenty of very funny moments, from Lady Button's Guide to Manners, to the parliamentary speeches of the corrupt MP Julian, and the terrible poet Julian giving his opinions on classic works of poetry. It does lack some of the charm of the series. A lot of the humour does derive from the interactions between the ghosts, and also how they react to modern life. And as most of these documents come from when the ghosts are alive, that whole layer of humour is mostly absent. Aside from the occasional article, such as Kitty's favourite pop tunes. So it really feels more like a string of flashbacks than anything else. But it's all very well put together, so any fans of the show should definitely enjoy it. A similar collection of documents can be found in The Doctor, His Lives and Times, by James Goss and Steve Tribe. This was published in 2013 to mark the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who, and is partly an oral history of the show, with quotes from many of the cast and crew telling the backstage story of the first 50 years. But in between those sections we also get collections of fictional documents, starting with the Doctor's school report, in which Cardinal Barusa gives him 3 out of 10, and continuing on with Susan's diary. Later in the book you get extracts from the memoirs of the Brigadier, a transcript of the trial of the Master, and K9 telling Sarah Jane what happened to the Doctor after she left. And there's lots of smaller bits and pieces dotted around as well, all beautifully designed. Obviously the more episodes you've seen, the more references you'll get. But there's still a lot of good stuff in there for fans of every level. Personally, I'd say some of the best parts are when cast and crew from the classic series comment on the newer episodes, and those involved with the new series give their opinion on the classic series, which really ties the whole celebration of 50 years together. It's a great package overall, although it is 10 years out of date, but it's a very nice collection all the same. A similar collection of documents can be found in Twin Peaks: A Secret History by Mark Frost. This was published in 2017, just before the 3rd season of the TV show came out, and fans like myself were avidly perusing it, hoping for hints of what was to come. But really it looks backwards. It tells the story of an FBI investigation into a collection of documents, which span the entire history of Twin Peaks, beginning with the journals of Lewis and Clark as they explored the regions for the first time, and going right up to the 1980s, exploring the backstory of many of the characters from the show. Along the way, it also introduces many fortune topics into the Twin Peaks mythology, from the flying saucer investigations of Project Blue Book to the occult investigations of Jack Parsons. It's all fascinating stuff and adds many layers of mystery to the Twin Peaks universe, as well as developing many of the minor characters. Sadly, none of that made it into season 3 of the show, and David Lynch was quoted as never having read it. But there was a sequel, Twin Peaks: The Final Dossier, again by Mark Frost, which follows up on both the previous book and on season 3 of the show, as the FBI agent who wrote the previous book attempts to follow up on the lives of all the characters in Twin Peaks, to find out exactly what happened to them after the original show ended. It's nowhere near as good as the first book, being much more of a linear narrative, but it does provide a lot more answers than season 3 did, so it works as an epilogue to the show as a whole. And anyone who watches season 3 of the show without these 2 books as bookends will definitely be missing out. Finally, we have Mr. Robot, Red Wheelbarrow, by Sam Esmail and Courtney Looney, which take the whole format of a book from a fictional universe about as far as it can go. If you remove the wraparound sticker, giving details of the title and authors, you're left with a perfect recreation of one of the props from the show. The diary that Rami Malek's character Elliot keeps at the beginning of season 2. In the show, it gets burned in a fire, hence all the charring around the edges. Unfortunately, it doesn't smell of charcoal, but you can't have everything. It has to be said that the narrative is quite intense, as Elliot is quite a disturbed individual with several mental health problems, and being inside his mind for such a protracted period of time can be quite grueling. So it helps to read it just one bit at a time. But it all fits in perfectly to the show's narrative, as it's co-written by the creator Sam Esmail. And it's not just a diary, you also get several inserts with letters, a cigarette packet, and a newspaper clipping, all from the universe of the show. All of which apparently contain hidden messages, but thankfully they've all been decoded by various people online. So yeah, it's a tough read, but for any fan of the show, it's definitely worth reading after you've seen season 2. And if you've never seen Mr. Robot, then you definitely should, because it's one of the best TV shows ever made. Obviously, this style of books is not limited to TV tie-ins. Some of my favourite books of all time follow the same format. Case in point, House of Leaves by Mark and Danielewski, which is an incredible piece of work, full of intricately designed pages, multiple levels of unreliable narrators, and takes you through several different levels of reality. Come to think of it, this may well have been an inspiration for the Twin Peaks and Mr. Robot books. It's quite harrowing and will mess with your head, but it's definitely worth it if you can get hold of a copy. And last but not least, there's S by J.J. Abrams and Doug Dorst, which gives you a replica of an old book, the text of which is rather dull, but the actual story takes place in the margins, as every page has multiple notes from two people investigating the mysteries of the author. The text of the book itself is quite hard to get through, but the meta story involving the annotators makes it all worthwhile. And like the Mr. Robot book, it also comes with a bunch of extras, which really help flesh out the world. Again, highly recommended if you can find a copy. So those are some of my favourite document books. Let me know in the comments if there's any similar books out there that I may have missed out on. As always, like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.